Electricast.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously, zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar. Zero patience for slow walkers. Those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night. Have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
Welcome to Her Extraordinary Life by Design, where we celebrate women who are shaping their lives one extraordinary day at a time. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, self-care coach for women who are ready to make self-care a priority to support them in life and business. Every week, I'll be speaking with inspiring women from various walks of life who will share their personal journeys and will discover how they have fearlessly carved their own paths as business owners, passionately pursuing their dreams and creating a meaningful impact on their communities. So let's get started. Hello, and welcome to Extraordinary Life by Design podcast. I'm your host, Leslie Gaudet, and today we are talking with Sharlene Stiles. Sharlene is not your average nutritionist. As the founder of Pure Natural Health and Wellness, she blends metabolic testing, personalized nutrition, and holistic life coaching to help midlife women cut through the noise and get their energy, balance, and confidence back. With more than 14 years of experience, plus training as a yoga and meditation teacher, Sharlene knows that food alone isn't the answer. She guides women to understand their metabolism, balance their hormones, support their nervous system, and recognize the habits and thoughts that shape their actions so feeling energized, confident, and clear becomes who they are naturally. She's also putting the finishing touches on her first book, written to help midlife women connect the dots between their symptoms, lifestyle, and hormones in a way that finally makes sense. Sharlene, I am really excited to welcome you to the show today, so welcome.
Thank you, Leslie. I am super excited to be here after diving into your work and seeing what you're doing for the world and for women. I'm super excited to have this conversation with you as well today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I really love the fact that we have a really powerful connection through one of my previous guests, who is a friend, Diane Conkin, who does mindset work in a way that I really love because her work cuts through to the, not just the Band-Aid, because I think a lot of traditional ways of looking at mindset or, all of those things that keep us stuck in old patterns, usually it's a long drawn out process. But with Diane's work based on Marissa Peer's RTT method, she's been able to really create lasting results for her clients in 1 to 3 sessions with a 99% success rate. And I just wanted to plug her here because it's because of Diane that you and I met, because I reached out to her and I said, Diane, I'm looking for someone to fill my spot here for my series for this month of September. And I know I can trust you to send me the right person, and which she did. So thank you for saying yes.
Yeah, my pleasure. And it's interesting. Diane has become a very good friend of mine. I also engaged her to work with my clients. That's how we got to know each other after understanding and learning what she did. So I was just as impressed as you were when I heard the modality and her approach, and then seeing evidence of that with my own clients in events that she and I have done together, as well as my personal work with her. Yeah, it's really quite fascinating, RTT. So let's give Diane a big shout out and big hug and love. She's an amazing human, and her work is really quite interesting and fascinating. Yeah. So thanks, Diane. And nice to meet you through Diane, Leslie.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same. So let's get into what you do, because I love the fact that you have a unique approach that blends science, intuition, nutrition, and lived wisdom. So can you take us back to that turning point? Because I know there's always that backstory. I know a lot of people, unfortunately, there are a few people out there, and the ones I resonate with, who really do share that backstory, because to allow people in to understand like what makes them tick, what brought them to where they're at. So what led you to this integrative path that you're on, and how did your story shape the way you now support women in midlife?
Yeah, I think if we dial it back to the launch pad, I was working in the corporate world. This story is probably not so different from some that you've already heard, but I was in the corporate world of finance and living a very imbalanced life. I was not only burnt out, but I was going through some health issues that the conventional methods just couldn't figure out. And what I was always kind of into natural health and looking at various practitioners to help me. And I realized, you know, the world was so conflicting with information, particularly on nutrition, that got me to kind of question, what's actually truth. And still that's happening here today. There's so much conflicting information out there. Like a lot of it is truth, and there's multiple truths at the same time, but which one actually works for me? So that kind of launched me to, not kind of, that was the turning point, I believe, to get me to study nutrition. So I started studying nutrition as for self-interest. So I took a nutrition course in Toronto. I'm in Niagara, so it was a bit of a commitment for me to go to school part-time. And what I learned there was really the catalyst to open up my mind to a whole new world. I was kind of, I don't know if this word gobsmacked, I don't know, in awe, like surprised, like why we are not taught how to take care of this most valued asset. The one thing that we have from the moment that we're born to the time that we die is our body. Like no one teaches us this. We may learn from our parents of origin or our caretakers as we grow up, but their views may be somewhat limited or skewed or incorrect or inaccurate. And we don't learn it in school. Certainly our medical system doesn't teach us about our body, how to care for it, how to nourish it. Magazines, depending on the author or where the information is coming from, have a slightly biased stance. So that's what prompted me to study nutrition from an unbiased source. That was really my objective, is like, what's really true? And from there, my mind just opened up and it literally was blown. I was studying, well, I was a financial advisor for many years, so I knew spreadsheets and numbers and assets and liabilities, profit, losses, things that were black and white. But the body being so complex, it was like, wow, it literally blew my mind wide open. So I was still working full time as a financial advisor, going to school in Toronto part time. And then I thought it'd be a really great idea somehow to say yes to my yoga studio's first yoga teacher training. And when I started studying yoga, I thought I was going to be, just enhancing my understanding of this ancient practice to help me kind of round out what I needed at the time was like stress reduction, more balance to my life. But what I really learned in yoga was about myself. That was the really pivotal point, I think, that made me realize something in my life is out of balance. And one of the things that I had in control was my career. I was in a fortunate situation, married to another financial advisor, so passed on my clients and embarked on my journey. But I didn't know what my journey was going to be. I truly didn't. And I just had some open space. So I thought, I'll go back to school, finish off the nutrition, just see what else I can learn. It was never intended to be a career. It was really out of self-interest. And once I had that education, you talk about it because you want to help. And people were becoming more inquisitive and inquiring about the information that I had gained. Started teaching yoga at my local community church, and because neighbors didn't fit in my living room to do it, so I started teaching yoga, and it just kind of organically just kind of blossomed into this thing. And I opened up an office in my yoga studio on the second floor, thinking that I would host retreats like that had nutrition and wellness and yoga. But what ended up happening was many women were coming to me for health and nutrition advice. And I was like, wow, okay, so this is where we're going. This is what we're doing. So again, it wasn't part of the plan. There was no business plan coming from a financial advisor. Like this was totally the opposite pendulum swing of just kind of going with the flow. So I practiced as a nutritionist for a number of years. And then I hit midlife. And maybe you can relate. Midlife for me, perimenopause into menopause, just changed the game. My body changed again. And everything that I learned in nutrition school just wasn't cutting it. It wasn't working anymore. So that's what guided me for the next step to dive deeper into understanding hormones particularly female hormones at midlife, metabolism. And that's when I dove deeper down into that channel, became a metabolic balance coach, and then wrapped in, what I had learned obviously with nutrition and yoga and meditation, but also through life coaching. So it's kind of like what I do now, I would say, is a mesh of all the experiences and tools that I've gathered along the way. So I think the result that I have now is, hopefully there's this science-backed or science-forward kind of a heart-centered approach that honors hormones, obviously the nervous system, and of course the messy parts of just being human, and particularly in midlife as women.
I love that. Also, when you were speaking, I was just thinking, you said that it was something that it was a need for yourself. And I think that's what I love is that authentically, when people go out and they teach, it's when they're usually teaching from a place of it was a need for me first, and then
Mhm.
saying, a lot of people were starting to ask me like, what's different? Like how there's something different about you. And I want to know more and tell me about what you've learned. What you've done, I think, is more of like, and as I said, a lot of people that do this, it's in that pay it forward type of mentality, right? Like, I learned this, I feel really good, and now I'm going
Mhm.
to go out and show others how to do the same. I think that's a really great way to be because, again, we can get all of the things that we need to make ourselves feel better, but when we are actually saying, "Okay, I feel really great," and then other people start to take notice or you just automatically feel, you know what? I know other women out there felt the way or feel the way I used to feel. And I'd really love to be able to support them. So I just wanted to recognize that because it's that pay it forward mentality of wanting to go out and serve so that others don't have to go through the same things that you did, but not have those answers. Because you're right. I feel a lot of the time that it's put a band aid on. It's not really getting to the root cause. And people might say, well, getting to the root cause, what does that even mean? It's really just so that you are going from the inside out, like getting to the actual reason, the pain behind why this is happening so that you can, I don't know if necessarily if it's dig it out, but it's like to really work on it so that it goes away and you lead from a different place, right? And I think that's what nutrition and taking care of your body and the mindset pieces, and then of course understanding that science is backing it. So I really love that.
Yeah,
Uh,
and I love that you used the term "from the inside out." I actually created a course very early on in my nutrition career called "The Art of Living from the Inside Out." So I totally resonate with that, and I just love that you use those words. And to your point, I think, people are asking questions and looking for answers because it is so confusing, this industry, right? Health, wellness, our bodies are so complex that, as I said in the beginning, I believe that there are many truths. There's multiple truths that can exist at the same time. And I don't believe that there's any one perfect solution that fits for everyone. After being in this industry for the length of time that I have, we go through different seasons. We go through different rhythms, right? Different things work at different times. And sometimes it's a bit of an experiment. So if we can, to your point, if we can, share what we know with others, and if it may help or at least be the next step to the bridge to the next step, we're just all supporting one another, which I mean, that's how we're designed as women, right? Work together as a tribe, which is fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things I know that as we hit midlife, we start to feel those changes, as we've talked about, and might even feel more tired, maybe more unmotivated to do things because, we start going, I don't know, for me, I started asking the question, is this all there is to life? But not knowing what to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. But we're not always connecting it to the changes in life, right? Like
Mhm.
and I'm sure that you probably can attest to this, that starting in our I've read, and I don't know how true this is, but I know I've read that starting from your 30s moving forward, our metabolism starts to shift. So our
Mm.
hormones start to change. And especially when you get into that perimenopause and then you're going through menopause and then you get out the other side post-menopause, there's all these changes. So we're not always connecting the things that we're feeling or thinking to our hormones, to our nervous system or the metabolic shifts, because this is what you do. So what patterns are you seeing most often in your clients that signal it's time for a different kind of support?
Yeah. You know, when we get to midlife, we have a few decades of accumulated imbalances, right? So the imbalances often come from nutritional imbalances, but then we also have stressors and dramas and traumas of life that just our body, you know, it holds on to or it records. So our body is always responding. And then we factor in this glorious time of these hormonal changes, and we kind of enter into often what I call a perfect storm. So that leads to often low grade inflammation. One of the most common things that I see is stress, low grade or even high grade consistent cortisol release. So, the stress is just kind of accumulated. And coupled with that, we get these blood sugar swings. So that can induce cravings, brain fog, which then leads to poor sleep. And then we have weight gain. And then women often think, that maybe something's wrong with me, or I just don't have the motivation to do things to do it right anymore. And then to your point, after the age of 30, we as women can lose up to 2% of our muscle mass per year, which is phenomenal, right? So as we lose our muscle mass, we then get a lower metabolic rate, or our metabolism starts to slow because we don't have the muscle mass to keep our basal metabolic rate higher. So then we get this feeling of that we're running on empty. Like that, I would say, is the cumulative effect of all of these kind of changes and imbalances. Then stress is such a big part of life, and it becomes our norm. And oftentimes when I speak to women, I'll ask them about their stress. And they're just like, "No, it's not bad. I just moved. I just got divorced. Like, I just ended my career. I'm not stressed at all," which is so fascinating, right? Because it just becomes our habituated state. So we don't really see it as stress. It's like, I've got this. But what ends up happening is, as I was saying earlier, the body really does keep the score. So our nervous system is then stuck in this on mode. So what that will do is show up as fatigue, that brain fog, that stubborn weight that most women complain about, particularly in midlife, low libido, fluctuating moods. So we tend to kind of pin it on menopause, but it really is, in my opinion, a medley or a combination of multiple factors intersecting at the same time. So what ends up happening, I see mostly, is women trying to like mask the symptoms or get energy from external sources like with caffeine or quick fixes, or to deal with the weight, they're looking at restrictive diets. And really what this time, I think, points us to is to the signal is that energy is just not going to recover in that way. So our cravings get louder and we can't quiet them. So the performance shifts, right? That shifts our focus, our strength, our mood, also our confidence. And then what I see quite commonly and sadly is this social kind of anxiety where, and I don't know if COVID kind of prompted this, but where people don't actually want to go out. They want to stay home. They don't feel confident in their skin, their body, their clothes. They don't know what to wear. Nothing fits. They feel like crap. They're embarrassed. So they don't want to do anything, which further aggravates the problem and the energy levels. And also, I think, chips away at self-confidence.
Yeah. The thing is, when you were saying about COVID, isn't it funny how, well, for example, I can use myself an example. I've been working from home since 2018. So it was pre-COVID. And
Mhm.
then as COVID came, like, I was used to like coming and going whenever I felt like. When I wanted to go out, I went out during whatever time of day, whatever I felt like. And so I didn't think it was going to affect me the way it did. But when we were told, like, now you have to actually socially distance yourself, I think that is where a lot of changes happened. And so not only if you were going through, I believe through whether it's midlife or just hormonal changes, hormonal changes happen, I think, for women monthly when you're still in the cycles, right? And then you become a mom. There's those hormonal changes that are also happening when you're pregnant, but also too, when you're going through the stages, the changes, the transitions into like the meno and then the postmenopause. What I'm seeing is that when I was told I couldn't go out, it it wasn't necessarily a relief at first. It became like, oh, I was kind of resentful. And then I was like, oh, this actually isn't so bad. And I got used to it. So it became
Mhm.
a pattern for me to stay in. And what I notice with myself, and I'm not sure if this is something that also you notice with your clients, is that when we were told it's safe to go back out, it was almost like there was those moments when one of my first moment, I remember it clearly, of being in a crowd of people and feeling extremely uncomfortable for
Yeah.
the very first time in my life. So my question, I guess, for you is, when it comes to, especially if we're going through all these hormonal changes, do you think that post-COVID played a part even more so for draining someone's energy? Meaning, it became a chore to even think about going out, or it became a hardship for someone to feel like they had to go out? Because I'm just
Yeah.
curious about that. I mean, it wasn't part of the questions today, but I just thought because you brought it up, it's very fascinating. I'm curious because, like I said, from my lived experience, I then became extremely uncomfortable, and it took a while. And even
Mhm.
still today, I know people, it's like they feel so uncomfortable going out.
Yeah. And I'm just gonna preface this by this is through my lens.
Mhm.
So and perhaps maybe not what most people may think, but what I look at it through is from the brain aspect or the mindset aspect. Because I too, Leslie, felt that exact same way. And I believe the crux of it for me was anyhow the contrast between isolation, safety, quiet, restful place, right? Versus when you go out, there's so much stimulation. And I think the contrast when the world was just humming along before COVID, like we were just used to that kind of pace. And then the world gets shut down and you're forced into the cave to have some space, to have some quiet. And then when you go back out into the world, you realize like, oh my, what the heck is happening out here? It's almost too much for the nervous system. It's like sensory overload. So our brain, our primal brain, survival brain, is designed to conserve energy and use the least amount of energy possible. It it doesn't want to, exert energy where it's unnecessary. So I think that can be a contributing factor. Also, our primal brain, survival brain, is wired for pleasure, conserving energy and what's familiar. So I think that pause in the COVID lockdowns gave us this introduction to like chill out, which we haven't had. And it's so interesting, right? Because it was such a contrast, but how beautiful that space is to kind of get us off that merry-go-round or, the constant stimulation and to have that break. So I just wonder if that may be because it was such a contrast and we've never really had that before where it feels like just too much to be out and social.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, again, for me at least, by that point, I pretty much I was really kind of like on the other side of menopause and going through the postmenopausal stage, but I still had those hormonal changes. And I think it really did play a part in my nervous system feeling completely terrified to make that change again. Cause I made the shift of, okay, well, you told me, I mean, I could do whatever I wanted. Then it was like, now you can't. And then it's like, okay, everything's fine. The world is open again, open for business. And it's like, oh, I don't know if I'm ready. Like you were
Yeah.
saying, we're built for that survival mode. We're built to like protect ourselves. The brain is saying, okay, I don't know if it's safe for you because I've, I guess, made myself believe that at the time, made myself believe that it wasn't safe to go back out
Yeah.
because of what was going on and because of what happened. And that was a really scary time, obviously,
Yeah. And,
right?
that's the story we were led to believe, right? So
Mhm, mhm.
we were we were surrounded and engulfed with fear. And yeah, leaving the cave is scary because it could threaten our survival. So really, speaking to that primal brain, which exists in all of us, like as
Mm.
humans, that's our little reptilian brain. It's there. That's how it was all created, right? From that survival need. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So now that we are past that time and well, we still have it as part of our life, but we're now in a post-COVID world. We're living a different type of world because now, because everyone, like you said, things were shut down. People actually had to learn to work from home. Now people are wanting that lifestyle because we actually had that brick wall moment where it's like, okay, things have to shift and lifestyle has to change. And
Mm.
before we were just like little worker bees going about our business because this was the life we were living. I think living in that hustle culture mentality. And I always say
Mm.
hustle culture mentality because I truly believe we're just meant to like be these worker bees without thinking, just go, go, go.
Yeah.
And I think COVID, and I'm bringing that up just because I know that it just was that stop sign that forced us to actually take a look at the way we were living our life. We were living on sometimes fumes. People were pushing themselves to exhaustion, to
Mm.
burnout a lot of the time. So, from your perspective, I want to ask you about the nervous system right now.
Yeah.
How does supporting the nervous system impact a woman's ability to think clearly, to set boundaries, to show up fully, and not just in their professional setting, but also in your personal life as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. Our nervous system, as we were talking about before, there's two dominant kind of lanes. The parasympathetic, which is rest, digest, and the sympathetic nervous system, which is fight or flight and often freeze. So if we can get out of that, what I call go mode, the fight, flight, or freeze, what that leads to is less reactivity. And in my opinion, more clarity of thinking, which can help us make better choices, set better boundaries. So, as we talked about earlier, when we are in stress mode, that is survival mode, right? Our brain is scanning the perimeter for everything that is wrong. So that can skew our views to everything that is negative and be hyper vigilant and really be aware of all the things that are negative because that's what our brain is designed to do is recognize threats so that our survival is not affected. So when we're in that stress mode, we're very much in a short-term mode, like escape danger, get out of harm's way quickly. We're making decisions that are based on short-term thinking to avoid the danger or the potential threat. So that can affect how we see things, our vision, obviously, our decisions, and also the solutions that we would choose versus if we had the space, the capacity, the time to daydream or just relax. That allows us, to get into that restful state, the parasympathetic mode. And it allows us to look further into the future so we can make better long-term decisions or plans. Of course, nervous system, if we talk about the biomechanics or the biology of it, when we have a regulated nervous system that leads to better sleep, improved digestion, which leads to better moods, mental clarity, and also it gives us the space to like really like to feel things, to see things, to think and create much differently than when we're in this reactive mode of go or survival or stress. So I use multiple tools with my clients depending on where they are, but I don't think we can overlook blood sugar balance. That is really the crux of maintaining our fuel. And when we go long periods of time without fuel or we have too much carbohydrates and high sugar, we're getting into the crash kind of stage. So that adds an additional stressor to the body. So we have to, food has to be part of that, but also learning to take micro breaks. And exactly to your point, Leslie, in this hustle culture, we're geared to go, to create, to strive to achieve, to get more. So if we can take these little micro breaks, and even if it's just a couple of minutes of simple breathing or nervous system resets, particular rituals, I tend to recommend somatics quite often to my clients. This is a very simple, easy, restful practices to help regulate a nervous system and store tension. Sometimes I use flower essences. So these are
Mhm.
like homeopathics. I use a lot of different methods, and including perhaps more on a science basis, testing minerals. So micronutrients, which are the spark plugs for all of our cells to work. We often talk about vitamins in the nutrition world, but most people don't realize it's the minerals that are required for the vitamins to do their job. So if we can really support nervous system regulation, I think we can easily or much better say no as women and then say yes to what is truly in alignment with our desires, our needs, our goals, rather than reacting into this kind of knee-jerk survival mechanism. So the outcome, in my opinion, is calmer presence in work, in life, with your children, in your relationships. You're more perhaps available for all aspects of your life. Your priorities can become clearer. We have more ease, more flow, and that's our natural rhythm as females, right? Flow versus structure and, like, as you said, hustle or grind culture. Does that answer
Yeah.
your question? I hope it does.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's great. I really appreciate that. One of the things too is that I love that you brought the nutrition piece in because I think that also can obviously, when you're going through shifts and changes in your body, it really makes a difference on what you're eating. I noticed that too, like from when I was younger, what I used to eat now is so different than to what I can eat now. That doesn't mean I can't eat some of the same things, but it does affect me differently than when I was younger. And it's hard to explain until you go through the process and you start feeling the changes in your body and start realizing some of the ways the foods that you used to eat are not really supporting you the way they may have before, or just the lifestyle choices that I made around food. So I really love
Agreed.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And one of the things too is understanding your body's cues so that you can support your metabolism and your hormones. So when we do that as women, especially, how can that shift us to help us make more aligned, clear decisions in our everyday life? Because I know you were talking about that, but the part about understanding our cues, because I talk a lot about burnout often, and I
Mhm.
started really stepping back a little bit about saying specifically burnout because I know most of the women I've talked to, they don't look at burnout as the topic. It's more a symptom. So they really
Mm.
kind of focus on symptoms of being overwhelmed, exhausted, less motivated, procrastinating. These are just symptoms in a bigger picture of what's happening in their lifestyle. So when that comes for specifically around what you really help your clients around, how do we understand those cues without looking at them as just one-offs?
Yeah. And this is such an interesting question. And I think probably some of the biggest work that I do and the message that I try to communicate with my own clients is that our body is always communicating with us. We're in constant conversation, and the body doesn't use words, it can only use symptoms. So when we recognize a symptom, it's really our body's way of trying to get our attention, to support us. Our body is always working for us. Like the body's primary objective is survival. That's truly what it wants to do. So what can happen, I believe, is, or at least what I see, is many people get frustrated with these symptoms and think something is wrong. Or the converse is you try to shush them with perhaps a medication or override them by doing something else. And if we can really tune in to these cues, whether it's energy or hunger or sleep patterns or, the hot flashes, and take them as this is the way the body is trying to communicate with me, I think we can base our decisions more, I would say, generously and compassionately versus, looking at these symptoms as like something urgent or it's like a wake-up call. And then you know, hopefully women will stop asking what's wrong with me because this thing is wrong and it shouldn't be operating this way or it shouldn't have this way. And you get frustrated by looking at the mirror and get mad at yourself or at your body for like not supporting you or not looking the way you want to or behaving in the way that you want to. And if we were to really look at our body with inquiry and compassion, like you would ask a 5-year-old child, maybe asking the 5-year-old version of you, like, "What's up, girl? What do you really need?" Like, get inquisitive. That to me would be so much more supportive to understand what our body really needs. And I think we can't overlook that our bodies are innately wise. Like, our body doesn't just want to survive, it truly wants to thrive. And as we talked about earlier, it wants to take the path that requires the least amount of energy. So that's its natural and optimal state. And given the right foundations, the right tools, the body is so resilient and will adapt so well and so quickly with the proper tools and the proper support. And I suppose if I can just repeat myself and leave this one kind of idea that the body is always working for us to protect us and using symptoms as the clue. So hopefully not trying to shush them and to recognize them as attention is required, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I really wanted to get your perspective. And I
Mm,
was thinking, along those lines, but of course, you're the expert in this particular area. And I just wanted to see, like, what is your thoughts on this? Because it's really important, I think, that we start looking at at them as clues, like all of the things, they all can be indicative of something else going on in our bodies or in our lives. Something else
mhm.
is maybe the cue for us to take notice, to make change. And it's not about beating ourselves up. And I think one of the things too that you had said, it reminded me of someone that I had read a post on social media. This was maybe a year or so ago. And she had said, it was really sad for me to read, but she had said something along the lines of that she hadn't looked at herself in the mirror in 6 months.
Mm,
And that to me was, again, not allowing herself to be okay and not to get mad at herself for the changes that were happening, instead looking at the cues that were going on, the little prompts, and then to start asking questions. And if understanding that if you don't have the answers, to look for people who do, and then not beat yourself up. Again, having that compassion, looking at like what's going on in your life, but having compassion for yourself as you would probably for anyone else in your life that might be going through the
yeah.
same thing. We're so hard on ourselves, right? And I truly believe that, especially as women, because we've been led to believe that this is what beauty is in the beauty industry. This is what beauty is supposed to look like. This is how your body's supposed to be shaped. This is how you're supposed to dress, how you're supposed to look, how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to talk. Instead of just saying, own your skin that you're in. Allow yourself to love the skin that you're in, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have one final question for you.
Yeah.
So as we've talked about, we live in a fast-paced, moving world. Again, I truly believe that, for lack of a better terminology, that hustle culture is still an idea that is taught to us from the moment we start going to school, because it's like, I believe we're taught to push, push, push. But on the flip side to that, I do see a shift happening where women actually are now, and I'm sure you probably have too, starting to pause long enough really to actually hear themselves, to think. They're starting to question their role, the routines that maybe are no longer fitting in for them or no longer feeling aligned, and realigning their lives in a way that honors their energy, their capacity, the purpose, what they want for their lives. So from your own perspective, how are you seeing this show up in the work that you do? And what gives you hope about where we're headed?
Yeah, thank you. It's interesting. I see this too collectively. It's almost like popcorn popping.
Mm.
These waking up all over in different capacities and in different ways. And it's interesting, I think we've been blindly somehow pushed into this masculine type of world and energy as what you call hustle culture. And while structure is needed, that's not really how we're designed as females, right? We're designed for flow, for creation, for nurturing, for supporting. So I do see that women are waking up, and perhaps that's, comes with time.
Mhm.
And maybe it is just energetically, like, where we are as society now, but I do see that this exhaustion is just no longer tolerable for women, and they feel this misalignment, and I personally feel like this is fantastic. It truly is, because it prompts inquiry, and then from that inquiry, ultimately, that can lead to change. So I see this as a beautiful thing, and this collective awakening, and when we can choose rest over grind, or saying no to roles that cost us energy or are misaligned, and then we can redesign a life to match our own capacity and our own purpose, I think that's where the world can just be ignited and we can truly shine, and not only as independent women, but as a society. So from my perspective, I see women who are constantly reaching out to me. Like, to your point, they're knowing something's wrong, but they're not sure what to do about it or how to untangle the life that they've created. So often when women come to me, it shows up as most often health concerns, weight, or hormonal changes or metabolic issues. So it's kind of the physical thing that is the underlying prompt that gets women to reach out to me. And this imbalance, as we know, comes from far more than food. So, yeah, of course, nutrition in the health industry, as we talked about, is very confusing. But the real reason that we eat is not about the food at all, is it? So,
Mhm.
nutrition is where most people or women start working with me. They come for food, for hormones, for weight, that sort of thing. And of course, obviously, that's powerful and part of it. And as you said, that's not just the only aspect. So, very early on, I realized that it's not just about food, and the real change happens when we look at how we're living, how we're thinking, what we're believing, how we're being. And that's why I personally, got into life coaching and studied that early on into my career, is to help women shift the patterns beneath the surface. Because once we can make that shift, that food part becomes relatively easy. And I think the more women that become aware of this imbalance and try or make strides to change it, even though it can feel scary and daunting, stepping away from the familiar, I think the more that we can talk about this, and exactly as what you're doing, Leslie, the more that we can talk about it collectively, I think we can support each other as women, as a tribe, that we're meant to do. This is our nature. And we can also show each other what's possible when we break away from this mold that we've been kind of forced into, that we wake up to feeling like this no longer serves, it no longer fits, it doesn't feel aligned. So for me, I think it's very exciting. If I envision a world with more feminine energy, like our natural nature as females, I see more love, more freedom, more receptivity, more softness, more openness, more beauty. And the more that we can choose that, I think the easier it'll be to be aligned in our bodies, in our health, and in our minds. And that can only have a ripple effect. So I don't know. At the end of the day, I think food matters, but it's never just about the food, as we've talked about already. And when women can shift how they live and how they think, and they can honor their own true nature and their own energy, the health part just naturally falls into place. So that's the real awakening I see. And I think this is only just the beginning.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the fact that now more than ever, women are really starting to support each other and really be able to feel like they're being open about what they're going through and asking for help. Because that, I think, was probably for a lot of people the hardest thing to do, was actually open up and say, hey, I need to talk about this. I need to talk to someone about what I'm going through because I don't understand it and I don't know what to do. And instead of suffering, they've reached out to people like yourself to get the support that they need. So, Charlene, thank you very much for spending time with me today. I've loved hearing your perspective. First of all, your journey into what you do and your perspective on midlife wellness to nervous system support, the power of nutrition, the power of tuning into our body's cues and what it's trying to tell us so that we can start living that beautiful life that we all aspire to. And I love the fact that there is a future for women in this space that really allows us to not just only own it for ourselves, but to actually do it collectively. Because that's where I see this going, is like a lot of women are now partnering up and really supporting each other. So I really, 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 I can't say it enough, appreciate you being here with me today. So thank you.
Leslie, it's my ultimate pleasure. And thank you. And thank you for the work that you do for women all across the world. So congratulations and thank you. It's been a real pleasure.
Oh, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And to our listeners, if you'd like to connect with Sharlene directly and learn more about her personalized approach, you can find your contact information in the show notes. Remember, your wellness isn't a project to fix, it's a relationship to nurture. And when you choose to listen to your body, trust your signals, and care for yourself with intention, that's when everything starts to shift and feel more aligned, from the way you lead to the way you live and to the way you love. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep believing, and keep designing your extraordinary life one day at a time. Thank you for joining me on Her Extraordinary Life by Design. I hope you've been inspired and empowered by the incredible stories shared on this show. If you enjoyed this episode and the conversations we've had, I would greatly appreciate if you could take a moment to leave a review. Your feedback and support mean the world to me, and it will help others discover the podcast and join our empowering community. Remember to hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Together, we can continue to learn from these amazing women, uncover their extraordinary journeys, and be motivated to create our own lives by design. Thank you again for tuning in. Until next time, stay empowered and keep shaping your extraordinary life one day at a time.
Listen. That's the sound of the fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. The sound of captivating electric performance, dynamic drive, and the quiet confidence of ultra-smooth handling. The elevated interior reminds you this is more than an EV. This is electric performance redefined. The fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron.
Every minute your finance team spends wrestling with data is a minute lost. Insight Software's AI-powered insights instantly move you from complexity to clarity. Automated analysis, real-time reporting, strategic recommendations, all at your fingertips. Transform how your finance team works and watch your business grow. Stop wasting time. Start making smarter decisions. Learn more at insightsoftware.com/AI.
Electricast.